Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, BI, for inviting us here. It's a really pleasure to be here and a great honor. So today I'll be speaking partially about what kind of work what we do, as well as the thoughts and ideas what we have been following, and the ideas what we're trying to do. So as Aarti was explaining, we work a lot in ecological design or environment-friendly construction. So while doing this, it starts right from the design, but the major component of our work happens only because of our contractors and builders are able to execute it. Otherwise, whatever we are doing would just remain in our ideas and on our drawing boards. So people like you are the ones who will be a milestone or a cornerstone for all these works that we are doing. And without the contractors and the teams working on the ground, we cannot execute our works in a way we would like to do it. So our firm, as Ms. Aarti explained, that we work in a manner that we conserve water, we work with conserving resources, we work with conserving our energy, which is used during the construction as well as post construction. So I'm going to talk about the whole work in two parts. One is about how a master planning or a development of a land can be looked at in an alternative manner. And the second part would be about how do we get our building materials and where do we source it from? Because that becomes a very crucial part of any execution of a building. So, the approach when we are looking at it, most of the times when a client approaches or a developer is thinking of an idea of developing a project or realizing a project, the portion starts with the idea that, okay, this is the FSI, this is the setback what we have, that's the kind of a ground coverage we are allowed, and what kind of a structure would come. But when we are doing this, the current scenarios which we are seeing across our cities and across the world, in summers, the cities are starved for water. Last this May itself in Bangalore, there was a situation that the people staying in apartments didn't have water to take bath, didn't have water to use their toilets. People were going to shopping malls to use toilets. And just a week back, we were in a situation in Bangalore itself after 3 months of that scenario that there was so much water that the entire city had come to standstill. The roads were completely flooded. The basements of each and every apartment and building were flooded with water. So, how do we look at this kind of an imbalance and how do we approach towards it to make sure that throughout the year we have a sustainable source of water? So, keeping this in mind, this is the kind of approach what we take. So, this is a land which about 100 acres of a parcel where the client have wanted to do a development of villas and work in a way that it's again in Chikmagalur, so similar terrain as Kerala, a steep sloping terrain with a lot of coffee plantation there. So, keeping that in mind, we studied the entire topography. We understood the kind of. So, the first map is of contours. The second one shows how the land is sloping from one direction to the other. So, that gives us an idea about how the water is going to flow. The next one, which shows green, yellow, red kind of maps, that tells us how much steep or shallower is the slope of the land. So, depending on that, we can see which part of our land is buildable. So, with the initial studies, we can find out where the water is flowing, where the plants are growing, and how do we conserve these water flows so the soil doesn't get eroded. So, keeping all these in mind, now after offsetting the areas which are of steep slope, the areas where the water is flowing in channels, what we're left with is the yellow and the green patches, what you see in the last image, which is towards the rightmost part for you. So in that portion is where we have planned the whole building. So it's the kind of alternative thought that we have pitched to some of our clients who are developers, who are builders. So they have been also looking at a clientele which is more sensible now, which is understanding that going ahead, the climate is going to just get worse. And then we have to look at those kind of solutions which would make it livable city. So that is 100 plus acre of a land what we were looking at. This is in Hyderabad. a more urban kind of a setup where it was a 14 acre of a land which we were given, and the clients wanted to do again a villa project. So the same approach what we had for the large development, we could take that same idea. So the clients wanted somewhere close to about 50 plots, but we worked with them, and then we tried to come to a conclusion where it's a balanced solution, because at the end everyone wants to have a good return on their investment. So that is the main feature behind our development. But at the same time, what we tried to do is look at a kind of a land share, which is a common land which is given to an each and every plot. So you have a part of a land which is owned by the entire community, and then you have your villa land which is owned by you. But by doing this, we were able to give them so this is the part where we were looking at, and the dark green patches what you see on the map. So those are the corridors which we left for the water to move. So that way the water is still conserved. There is no storm runoff. So we conserving the water and not letting it off into the streams or the rivers which are flowing next to us. So we're conserving the water within our lands. So it is available for us in the future when we have water starved. So that is the kind of approach we had towards the master planning. So I just wanted to touch upon this and not just get into the material. Now we will look at our next part of the presentation, which is about how and where do we get our material from. And while doing it, how can we do it faster? Not probably as fast as Mr. Sharad showed us in the morning, but still try and do it in a faster way. So we had one client who approached us a couple of years back, and they had this about 10,000 square foot of a land where they wanted to design a school building, but the land wasn't theirs. They had taken it on the lease. And when we are doing that, and when we are designing a building or a school which is to be constructed over there, at the end of that lease time, which is 5 years, what we're going to see is a large rubble which would be landing on a landfill. So, keeping this in mind, we had all these other constraints at the same time, the type of classrooms, we had the apartments coming next door. So that was the kind of site which we had, and the building which we were looking at was about 10,000 square foot. And Vastu was always there in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in all these regions. Nothing moves without Vastu. So we have to look at each and every corner. So there are all these factors which do come in picture. And while doing that, also our effort is still not to compromise on our principles of ecological design. So even to the fact that the sloping roof, the highest point has to be to the south and the lowest point has to be north. So all those factors were in picture. And at the same time with that, we had a different type of a schooling system or a pedagogy with which we work. So that was the kind of an idea or a concept level design which we have. And to do all this, the client approached us in December end, and they wanted to go functional in June first week. So, with all this happening, the land being leased, we were also exploring how to construct. So, this whole building was designed in a manner that it was a metal structure, a fabricated structure on site, not a prefabricated one, but done in a way that it can happen in parallel. Our walls don't have to stop the work of our roofs. So we had all the ecological factors coming in picture. We had air circulation done in a way that the colder air moves where the students are sitting, the hot air is moving at the top of the building. So all those factors did come in picture, and this is the finished building where we have all the school classrooms, the walls which are in an organic form going. So the design part and the aesthetic part is also playing a major role in how you're developing your building and how you're planning it. This is a toilet for the kids. And while doing this, this whole constant thought of 5 years down the line, what happens to this building? Where does it go and what happens to it? Because our project doesn't end when we have transferred it to the client. We also have to look at what happens to the life cycle of our building. because those are the resources we have taken from our earth. And now what happens to those resources? So most of the cases it would have landed up in a landfill like this. It would have filled up some low lying area in the city, causing more and more flash floods during the rainy seasons. So we started exploring ways, if there is an alternate to bring into this construction. What are the types of materials we can use? What are the kinds of exploration of structures we can do? So to this, we went back to our initial project. So we have been working on this idea of using construction material from the past buildings, the construction waste, into our designs. We have been doing it for decades. So in these projects, what we had to do is we had to go through a lot of processing of material, because the material which you salvage from a demolition site is not very readily available. So in all these projects, when we had to use, so this was a chicken coop earlier in this particular case, which we transformed it into a residence, and all the material which was from the chicken coop was utilized into making these buildings as well. So while doing this, because we are architects and our projects are individual houses, at every stage we were facing problems. We didn't have the setup. We didn't have a setup to process, hold the material. How do we do it? So it used to be a constant challenge for us while working on to, I'm just skipping some parts of it. So this was one project which we worked in about 2013, where the one which you see on the left, that was their old house, and the one you see on the right is their new house which we designed for them. But this house was dilapidated. So while working on it, we documented the entire structure. We looked at the kind of design which we wanted to do. Thankfully for us, the plot size was a quite large, decent size of a plot, and we had a place to hold all this material. So what we did was, instead of bringing in a JCB and running it over the entire structure, we got manual labor involved. We broke down the building part by part. We took aside the concrete separate. So what you see on the right side over there, you have bricks collected in one part, you have concrete collected in one part, you have stones collected in one part, you have all the doors, windows, everything put in together. And then to use that concrete, we had to process it, we had to manually break it, because the scale of the project didn't allow us to set up a plant which can use like a crusher and break it. So with that, we worked with manual labor, and our contractors were really gracious in giving a lot of effort into it. And then we worked in using the entire construction waste. So the material which we salvaged from the previous building, out of that, close to 60% of the material we were able to use in construction of the new building, including the steps, the flooring, the doors, windows, which are quite easy to build with. So we were able to work in all these scenarios, even the grills, railings, so these doors and windows. So, being architects, we were able to sort of sometimes even bridge gaps, that one client is bringing down their structure, the other client is building their house. So, we would take materials from this person and give it to that person, strike some kind of a deal between them. But now, when we want to put this idea at a city level, that is where we reach our limitations, because we don't have that kind of a resource as you all people have. You have your good setup of people on site, you have your communities where you can interact with one another. So in a similar initiative like this, in Bangalore, the current construction waste management scenario, Shobha developers, you all probably have heard of them, they've been allotted a contract to get the construction waste, process it, and use it into buildings. So the whole aggregates, the fine aggregates, they've been processing it and reusing it in construction. And thankfully, IS code now permits partial replacement of virgin material with a secondary resource material in structural as well as non-structural elements. So with that, all this going in, we thought, can we look at our building in a different manner? can we look at our whole structure being designed to be dismantled? So, right from the foundation of this building, we kept thinking how we can do it in a way that after 5 years, you take this whole building apart, you either put it back somewhere in the same manner, or you give the parts by parts to different places. Rather than it becoming a waste, it turns into a resource. So, the client who bought the steel for this building probably at 35, 40 rupees kg now can sell it at 75 rupees a kg when they bring down the structure. So they're rather making a profit over demolishing their building. So that is how we approached it. The foundation is done with granite slabs, what we get in Bangalore. We have walls which are made out of paper tubes. So these are all bolted together. So at the end of the building, you can just unscrew it, put it apart, and collect the resource from it. The exterior walls were designed using only a tack welding instead of doing a continuous welding. So you put it with a hammer couple of times, and the whole panel will come out. So every element, even the structural engineer pitched in into his ideas that instead of doing this truss with a completely welded manner, he designed it module wise. And yeah, so he designed it in a way that we can design only A parts of it. So if this building is demolished, you can take it and use it in roofing material for some other project as well. And by doing it with a nut and bolt kind of a system, the wastage which would have come while cutting or gas cutting the members, that's also reduced. So even the flooring material of the building, we looked at doing it with a paver block instead of doing like a tiling, because tiling would have required a wet mortar, which would have then created a lot of waste. So it was done with a, oh, thank you so much. So it was done with a paver block, so that way we can even remove that. The base of the flooring was not done with a PCC, it was done with a wet macadam. So that way you don't even lose the concrete which is put in the bed. You take even the large aggregates, you take the fine aggregates out of it, and the whole building can be removed. Yeah. So in this picture, you can see. So the entire floor of the school is done with a paver block. The furniture is from packaging industries waste. So the seating benches, what you see, they are the honeycomb boards which are used in packing of machines. So they are the left out, cut out parts from the main storage unit. So that is the overall structure with which we were working at, and that's how the entire finished building looks. We had to work with a lot of physical models as well, because as we were doing at a very fast pace, the contractor had a very little time to figure out joineries and systems for it. So we were doing it in a physical model, giving him an example, and then he was executing it at a real scale itself. So these are some of our other projects which we worked on. This is a school we've done in Coimbatore. So this is using the material soil which we got from the site itself and then used for construction of the same school. Again, using waste into construction. So the facade, what you see onto the right side, that's done out of the railway windows, what you used to have in the past days. All the sleeper coach would have that window outside with louvers, which you would leave in the night closed. So those are the windows which are discarded, and these are now FRP. Earlier they used to be aluminum, so they could recycle it, but FRP they can't. So that's used as an aesthetic element in the structure. So that is how the junkyard had it, and that's how we were able to transform the entire building. So rather than hiding it, we've been trying to show it like a badge of honor. So when your building is showing the waste material, also, you show it off. You don't try to hide it. So that way, you try and make a statement out of the waste what you've been using. So this is one school project we recently finished. So yeah, that's what I had to share with all of you. And in the overall this scenario, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic in this particular forum is unless and until you people start taking an initiative, when you demand or when you put this idea to clients, that is when it will come into reality. Otherwise, it would just remain as a boutique project in one particular architect's place or one particular project in a city. But till you people put your hands into it or get into it, it's not going to become very easy for others to follow. So I hope some of you at least start looking at the resources in a way that it could be a sustainable way, and the cities which you are in start becoming your quarries instead of some place far away in Orissa or Chhattisgarh where the forests are demolished and you're getting the resources from there. So I hope you had some takeaway from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anurag, for that very interesting session. Especially as an architect, I found it quite interesting and thought provoking as well, because nowadays, as we're slowly starting to run out of building materials, I think we all should start thinking about some techniques like this. Uh, the floor is open to questions. So if anybody has any questions, kindly raise your hands so that we can bring the mic to you.
Are you exclusively into architecture, or do you do runoff water management also?
So we have two fractions in our firm. So I'm from the architecture department of it. We exclusively work on architectural designs with all the water management components included in it. But for projects of other architects and other people, we have a water management team which specifically looks at water management in buildings,
Including terrains and those kind of angles.
rainwater management, wastewater
terrain
treatment
management.
system, everything. Even the land level water management, they take care of it.
Right. Thank you.
Any more questions? You could please raise your hands and we'll come to you with the mic.
So thank you so much. And we'd like to present a small memento as a token of appreciation.
For the same, I request our Center Chairman, George Palal, to kindly hand over the memento. So that's a traditional Aramula Kannadi, a cherished symbol of heritage and craftsmanship. And we are also very much delighted to present to you a custom created caricature thoughtfully designed only for you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.